Hey everyone, I'm going to go ahead and do my chapter 5 response on magazines. And so I think that there were two things that were incredibly interesting when it came to how magazines have progressed within society. First, when we talk about how the cost has decreased and how that actually increased the number of readers for the magazines. When we saw that the average magazine was from 25 cents to 35 cents, people started to realize that it wasn't very accessible, and so that made it difficult for the magazine companies to turn a profit. So the first two price decreases that we saw were the Cosmopolitan magazine and then the Muncie magazine. Cosmopolitan decreased their price to 12.5 cents, and at the time the Cosmopolitan magazine was a lot more about how to be an appropriate housewife and things like that, therefore making it a lot more accessible to do things like spread the message that they wanted. And then the Muncie magazine decreased their price to 10 cents. This is incredibly important when it looks at how we were trying to spread access to things like magazines and other media in an effort to not only allow for more people to have this access, but also give them an opportunity to be educated. Now, naturally, we start to worry about these magazine companies being able to profit if they're lowering their prices. But even though they were priced lower than what they were produced at, they were being widely sold now. So instead of having to sell it above production price and try to make a profit per magazine, they were able to sell below production price and turn a profit that way, and a substantially larger profit. This was really because of the influx and the increase of the price of advertisements that we saw. Once people started to realize that they were going to be reached by more people and more members of an audience, the price of an advertisement within a magazine went up substantially. And what that does is that made it an opportunity for not only these publications to have wider access, but it also gave them an opportunity to advertise their product. But even further than that, another interesting thing about magazines is the social implications that it had on a women's health. Specifically, when we talk about increasing access to things like magazines, we also saw an increased access to these pop media magazines distorting women's views of themselves. Some data that is incredibly shocking is that 80% of 10-year-old girls have dieted, girls as young as 5 are afraid of getting fat, and the number one wish for girls age 11 to 17 is to be substantially thinner than they are. What this shows us specifically is that the view in which the media is establishing through pop media magazines is that you have to be thin, slim, and beautiful in order to be socially acceptable. But what we see is that most recently, different campaigns have established work to start to correct this. Specifically in the text, they discuss the Dove for Real Beauty campaign that started in 2004 and is continuing to today, and how that is working to allow for body positivity to continue. Also, companies like Lane Bryant have begun to distribute the messages of body positivity as well in order to further empower young individuals. All of this compiles, though, into how people's access to information in magazine is distorted. First, we see that advertisers have a significant influence on how individuals view what they have the opportunity to see. Think about something like bras in a Cosmopolitan magazine. Victoria's Secret is going to be able to outbid someone like Playtex for these advertising spots, making sure that their products are more likely to be purchased. Even though the influx of advertisement costs have plateaued a little bit, there's still the opportunity to outbid individuals. What this shows us then specifically is that magazines still have a very specific target audience in comparison to how they started. While they may not be the most expensive form of media, they still are catering to more affluent individuals only because of the advertisement competitiveness that we see happening right now. The things that are being advertised are specifically targeted to upper middle and upper classes instead of those individuals that have less. But even further than that, there's a more influence when it comes to magazines' rights to publish. Now, no one will ever tell you that the concept of freedom of speech is inherently harmful, but it does distort the information that individuals have access to and the information that they get. Just like digital media, though, people are still most concerned with views, hits, and sales, and magazines are no different. Magazines are more likely to print something out of shock factor in order to sell more copies of something or they're willing to print a misleading cover line so that people are going to purchase their magazine in order to buy and learn more. Only then for the buyers to realize that this is fundamentally not true in what was put on the media and what was put on the front of this cover. So overall, when we look at the concept of magazines, while we did initially see a decrease in price to increase people's access to it, we saw that this increased access had a negative impact on not only young girls but women as well, distorting distorting their view of themselves. But then we see that this access is targeted and warped even further to specific individuals or specific access to a certain type of media. Thanks, y'all.